Shalom, and welcome back to B'nai Noach Academy, Thoughts on the Torah. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. So when you look in the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 13, it says there, you should not defraud your fellow. You should not commit robbery. And the third clause in this verse is, the wages of a laborer shall not remain with you until the morning. You should not hold back the wages of a laborer. Now let's focus in on this one and then get our perspective of how it fits into this verse. What is this rule exactly? What does it mean it shouldn't stay overnight? Literally, it says it shouldn't stay overnight until the morning. What does that mean? Well, the sages explain to us that we're talking about here a day laborer. So he works during the day, the entire day typically. So the Torah tells us you have all night. That means you have kind of one full shift to see to it that he gets paid. This is obviously, by the way, the caveat in the absence of having made up a specific schedule of payment. In other words, this is when it's assumed to do the typical payment as whatever the norm is. And apparently the norm, at least in biblical times, was a person works the day, you pay him. So here the Torah tells us you have an entire shift until the morning, until the next time that his work schedule comes along to make sure that he gets paid. Now, you think about it. Something seems to be odd here. You see, this is in the same verse where we're talking to somebody and we say to him, you shall not defraud your fellow. Somebody who's basically capable of racketeering, of fraud, of committing, various types of white-collar crime. And then we speak to someone who is maybe even an overtly greater lowlife, somebody who can commit robbery. And then we talk to the business owner or the employer who seems to be a nice guy. Don't pay your worker a little late. Think about it. Big deal. How do you compare these three? The first two, I can see the comparison. Although this seems to be a little more white collar, this is a more blue collar, but at the end of the day, stealing is stealing. But here, I'm not stealing from him. It's just a little delay in his payment. Just paying him a little late. Is that such a big deal? And the answer is yes. The Torah makes the association to tell us that this, which on the surface doesn't seem to be so severe, it doesn't seem to be so terrible. I mean, come on, just pay him a little late. But think about it. Somebody who is a poor day laborer, even if he's not poor, but in this case, especially if he's poor, he worked hard all day. Every moment that he worked, he was yearning. He was eagerly looking forward to that wage. He needs to support his family. He needs to have what to eat. Typically, if somebody is working this type of work, they're actually living from hand to mouth. So they need it more than the person who's doing a big business deal. Maybe even then you still need to pay on time. But maybe if you withheld it or if you delayed it a little bit, it won't impact a person's life. Says the Torah, this is like stealing. How does the Torah say? By bunching it up in this same verse, making that connection, making that correlation between defrauding somebody, between robbing someone, and here the Torah says paying late. So it's important when someone takes responsibility for someone else, especially when he has them working, you have him toiling and working hard, you have an obligation to pay the person. And it's actually brought down in the Talmudical teachings that in a certain sense, this last clause in the verse, the one that's talks about delaying the wages of an employee, is actually worse. It's more severe than the first two clauses in the verse. The first two clauses in the verse are so obvious. They're clear. This one, which seems to be so harmless, doesn't even seem to be a big deal, such a big problem. This one, tell us the sages, is actually more severe, and in God's eyes, it's more terrible. Because this is the one that typically somebody might allow themselves to get away with and still believe and be convinced that they're actually a good person, a decent person. I mean, after all, I just paid him a couple of days late. That couple of days could have made a big difference. That couple of days could have gotten his electricity shut off. It could have kept the children hungry. It could have, who knows what, maybe child needed a new pair of shoes and it's vital. They don't have a second pair of shoes. And now they had to endure the embarrassment of another couple of days going to school with torn shoes or what have you. Just several examples that come to my mind, and you can actually, I'm sure, come up with more examples. So it's important when it comes to being honest, those things that seem to be less severe and less, so to speak, harmful, those are the ones sometimes that are actually more when you examine it a little deeper, a little more beneath the surface.